Have you ever wondered, ever wondered?
Thank you for joining me today as I speak with acclaimed energy healer, Gene Krackehl. Gene is a Reiki master, spiritual life coach, ordained interfaith minister, National Book Award finalist, and intuitive energy healer. Formerly on staff at Northern Westchester Hospital's Center for Health and Healing, he now devotes himself full-time to his healing practice in Katoa, New York. His client list include numerous well-known medical doctors, therapists, and psychiatrists. Many times, they in turn send their own patients to them for healing. Gene has worked with people throughout the United States and 33 countries. As a result, thousands from all over the world seek his healing gifts. Gene is also an award-winning author of You Are the Healer, Learning to Fly, and Monday Morning Messages. For more than 25 years, Gene has given workshops to large corporations, organizations, and colleges throughout the Northeast. He believes part of his goal is to demystify the mystical in a down-to-earth manner as he helps people understand the power they have to heal their own bodies. Doing this, he could give love and light into this world. And I want to add that Gene is one of the most gracious and generous people I've met. Since getting to know him, he's become a dear friend. I am so delighted that you are going to see some of that beauty and kindness in this episode.
So it is a delight to have you here, Gene. And
it's an honor being with you. So,
well, I know you rarely do interviews, so it's even more of an honor to have you agree to speak with us today. So, Gene, I'm going to dive right in.
Sure.
So you've been doing healing since you were a child. And so I would like to have you tell us about that. It's fascinating. First of all, your two books are just wonderful, both of them. So I want people to be sure and
so you're the one who bought them.
What's that?
You're the one who bought them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sure you've had plenty of sales. They're just fabulous tools. And so the writing is really wonderful because you bring in your own personal experience. You also have exercises that people can do and, meditations. It's a wealth of information about how you became your life, as well as really practical help for people who want to, explore these issues deeper. So tell us about your childhood, knowing that you have this special gift, and then what brought you to do it full time?
Well, I have been doing healing work since I was a child. I'm an empath, which basically means that I can feel what other people are feeling. And most often it's the heavy emotions that we feel, because those are the ones that people project the loudest. And I would absorb these things. I can remember being in my crib when I was a baby and hearing my parents screaming at each other. And I would just pull in all of their anger, all of their pain, all of their fears. And I'd be there shaking, and they'd stop fighting in the other room. And I used that throughout my life. Whenever people were about to come to blows, I would just absorb their energy, and they just sort of calm down and stop fighting. It came in handy for bullies in the neighborhood. I would make them laugh too, so that would help a great deal. And at one point, I realized that I could generate these really good feelings inside of myself, which I could send to others simply by intending to do so. And I would feel this heat building up inside of my chest, and I'd just send it, and I could feel it going across to the other person. And they might be sitting there going, looking really down. And about 20 seconds later,
Wow.
And it happened consistently, again and again. I never told anyone about it because no one would have believed it. Plus, spending time in a rubber room wasn't high on my list of priorities. But eventually the word got out, and people were hiring me to take to heal people who were dying in hospitals in places like Europe and other places. And sometimes, not always, at the moment that I would send the energy, they would be taken off of a respirator and they get better. Sometimes more subtle things happened. Sometimes nothing happened. And occasionally at that very moment, when I gave them the energy, they would leave their body, the energy, leave their body and go to the other side. It's not in my control. When you give someone the energy, it's up to them and their higher self what they want to do with it. And so I didn't want to be known as the Kevorkian of energy healers, but it's really out of my control.
Yes.
So I went about doing this for a long time, but I was doing it wrong. I was using all of my own energy. And what happened was that I'd catch all of the diseases that all the people I was working on at a distance had. I got pneumonia 3 times. I got chickenpox twice. You're only supposed to get that once. Things like that. And after a while, I got so frustrated, with it that I gave it up for about 10 years, not realizing that I was doing it wrong. I finally realized, someone clued me in, and I realized that I have to pull it from the earth. I have to pull it from up above. Connecting to those up above at the time, I thought was a lot of hogwash. I didn't believe that stuff. I'm a skeptic about a lot of things, and you have to really prove it to me. But I started doing this, and got better and better. At the time, I got my degree in advertising design. I worked for 15 years as a graphic designer, art director, vice president, creative director, and places like Scholastic, NBC, Walden Books, General Foods. And after that, I spent 18 years in my own design firm. I found that I was going to give up the field because the corporate politics were driving me nuts. And, dealing with professional liars and backstabbers and people whose only their only job was to make you look bad and to take credit for your work. And instead of leaving or instead of quitting the field entirely, I decided to control my own environment. I started my own design firm. My only goal or my only rule really was to only work with nice people. And a lot of my friends laughed at me and they said, you're never going to get anybody that way. But with every adversarial person who came in that I didn't feel good about working, I'd say, gee, I'd love to work with you, but I'm too busy. I was starving to death at the time. Anyway, but for every person that I would turn away that was adversarial, 2 nice people would come in. And a lot of these people they became lifelong friends. And it went on and on and on. And until about 25 years ago, I heard about hands-on healing. And then the light bulb went on above my head. And I realized that this is going to be my true occupation. I studied with some of the best healers in the world. I worked where I studied with Rosalind Bruyere, Carolyn Mace, Judith Orloff, and many others. But my most major breakthroughs came from listening to my own guidance. And I really got in touch with people upstairs and started working with them. And that made all of the difference in the world. And so I made a slow segue. It was at a time when computers were just coming into the forefront. And, I liked them as tools, but I was used to doing mechanicals, and I was used to doing hand lettering, and I was used things that, people don't do anymore. But computers were foreign to me, but I forced myself to learn them. But every time I got, something down and I really got to, I knew all the keyboard commands and everything, they'd send a new manual with a new software, which would contradict everything in the old manual. And I hate reading. I just hate it. So, eventually I made the slow segue from that to my present occupation. And along the way, my wife would always remark, people would be coming in tears, and they'd always leave flying out, and it happened consistently. It still does. Here we are. And it's
great.
25 years later, I wrote actually 3 books, and I composed, I have like 8 CDs out with music that was channeled through to me, and I can't even read notes. I'm
It's
somewhat
beautiful
dyslexic.
music.
Thank
Just
you very
beautiful.
much. But I can't read notes, and I can barely play. I play with one hand, a few fingers on one hand, and but I could play it, put it all together with synthesizers, play about 60 different instruments, put them all together, and worked well. But I didn't realize that was happening because of a higher purpose. Later on, I decided I needed to do group healings, which for which I needed. I needed a guided visualization, which I came up with, but I needed background music. And so here it was, all of the music that I had done. I took bits and pieces and put it all together, and it was perfect. I took people out of their bodies to the other side, brought them back, went all the way through the chakras. And I realized that even though we're all different, we have different backgrounds, different nationalities, different cultures, and different everything. There are certain things as spirits that we're all the same.
Yes.
We all have fear. We all have repressed anger. We all have heartbreak. And I found a way to actually incorporate that so that I could work on maybe 30 or 40 people at a time while this is playing, and while the music is really getting inside of them and taking them and opening up the chakras that I'm working on. And it worked out beautifully.
God is wonderful. Well, I want to talk just a little bit about how you and I got connected. So before I started the podcast, I did an extensive search and read everything I could about healers, distance healers, energy healers. And I came across your website and ordered your books and absolutely loved them, of course, and thought I've got to try to, put this guy in the podcast. So we got connected, and what we decided was that you would first do a healing on me, and we set the date at September 20th. And then later we would do this interview. So I just want to tell a short story about what happened in the interim. So we set the interview up, and then we have some dear friends that live down from us, Eric and Cheryl. And I was going to have dinner with them on September 14th. Denny was gone. And so we had it set up. Well, Cheryl called that day, and she said that Eric was sick. And he's really healthy, strong guy. And so he was very sick, she said. So he was sleeping then for actually a couple of days. We thought, well, it's probably COVID or bad flu. So on the morning of the 16th, I think Cheryl went in and she looked down, and his arm was like, I don't know, 3 times the size. It was really, big and very red, infected. And so they realized, oh my gosh, this, isn't COVID. And Eric said, God, I feel like I broke my arm. And she's like, well, you've been sick for a couple of days, so that could not be the problem. So they rushed him to emergency, and the doctors said, one possibility is that he has necrotizing fasciitis, and they got him on, and which, as the common word for that or explanation is the flesh-eating disease. So they got him on antibiotics right away, big doses of antibiotics. And with, we know necrotizing fasciitis causes death. 1 in 5 people don't survive it. And so that started them and us on a journey for the next several days. By the 18th, Eric's temperature still wasn't down, and they had a huge combination of antibiotics on him, and he wasn't really responding. And so the doctors started to talk to them about, large tissue removal. And if they do that, then there's a lot of, surgeries, a lot of plastic surgeries. or amputation. The possibility of actually death is always in that. And they still didn't know. We were not sure what this is, but we know Eric isn't really responding. So I called you and I said, Gene, on the 20th, let's do a healing on Eric instead of me. And you were so gracious. You said, well, we'll do both. What an incredible man. So I said so I asked Eric if we could do this. And he said, of course. And then sent you pictures of Eric, Eric's arm, and Eric and Cheryl. And so then on the 20th, still by the morning of the 20th, there was no change in Eric. His temperature was still really high. And so we went into a healing session, you and I, and we, connected with Eric. And I want to bring Eric on now to tell what he was experiencing and the rest of the story while he was in the hospital. So here's Eric. Hi, Eric. We got you.
Hello.
Eric, this is Gene. I'm
Gene, so good to meet you.
Nice to meet you too, Eric.
So, Eric, you go ahead and you finish the story about you're laying in the hospital, and I'm sure, like all of us that love you so much, probably pretty frightened at this point. So tell me what happened about the afternoon of the 20th, then September 20th.
Yeah, so I'd been in the hospital for a few days at that point, and my temperature was 102, 103, and they were still trying to figure out what was going on and what the cause was even of the whole infection. But that morning, my last white blood cell count was like 32. And I think normal is between 7 and 10. So they were doing more blood work and trying to do cultures and stuff like that. And then it was about, I think that day, it must have been about 11, 12 o'clock that they did some more blood work. And then later that afternoon, or early afternoon, I should say, about maybe 1 o'clock, they'd come in and said my white blood count dropped quite a bit. My temperature dropped. Everything was looking good. So there was a possibility of me being released that day, which kind of shocked me because, I was a little nervous about leaving, to tell you the truth. But so the infectious disease doctor came in and the panel came in, and people all around my bed and just asking questions and looking at test results and whatnot. And so I ended up being released that day at about 3:30, and then went home and then had to come back for 7 days to get IV treatments at the clinic, which ended up going fine. And then so within that period of time of leaving the hospital, I would say within about 12 hours, my arm was actually looking worse because it got purple and black really quick. And then it started having blisters. Some of the blisters were maybe the size of a quarter. Some of them were kind of long and ran up and down my forearm. So the next day when I went into the clinic for my first treatment, the infectious disease doctor came and looked at my arm, and he was kind of panicked. So he said I needed to go back to the emergency room right away because it shouldn't be looking like that. When I did leave, I should say when I left the hospital, they had told me that the healing process could take up to a couple weeks of scabbing and, arm kind of cracking open and, skin scabbing over several times, things like that. But what ended up happening in that 12 hours after leaving the hospital was the boils and whatnot. And so then I went back to the emergency room that next day. I was there for about 3-4 hours. They did all the tests again. They ultrasound, CT scan, a number of things, and then did more blood tests and whatnot. And basically what they were saying is that it was just the toxins that had come out of my arm. So, and the doctor just he was concerned that it coming out like that, it was also going internally as quick as it was coming out. which wasn't the case. So it was just all on the surface. At that point, they told me it was just downgraded to cellulitis, which is just a skin infection at the surface. And then even the blisters and all the infection there within, I would say, about a day after that, those were kind of gone. I had what kind of looked like some scabbing over the top. So I was expecting some pain with that, and some, like they said, it would be coming and going and re-scabbing over. However, like I said, about a day later, those scabs weren't really scabs. They almost like fell off like paper. Underneath the scabs was not raw, was not open wound. It was normal skin, like what you see now. I have a little red on my arm still, but there was no more scabbing. The arm did not crack open in any way. I haven't had any pain. I haven't had any. It's really something that's a miracle. So as far as the healing process was just so quick, and the doctor was, lack of a better word, kind of dumbfounded. And I shared a little bit of this, and he was open to that too. So so the whole thing was just a really quick healing process, and I just feel very fortunate and blessed. So
That amazing.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
And thank you so much for reaching out and your gift of healing, and I'm very open to stuff like that. Have been most of my life, and I think that might have couldn't have hurt. So
it's great.
Well, you're very welcome. And I used you, Carlene, as a surrogate. We had done a healing session just before that, so I was already connected to Carlene. Mm-hmm. So I just used her connections to you in order to send the energy. So it was the energy that did it, and I'm very happy that it had that outcome.
Yeah,
I can never tell. It's never up to me whether something works or not.
Right.
There's many other factors involved.
Yeah.
Is some of it that Eric was open as well? So he, we had talked about it. He'd got permission to sort of enter maybe his energy field. And
absolutely. I have people who think that, they can just come here, lay on the table and say, here, do it to me, and I'll do all the work. No, I need their participation. I need at least for them to accept the energy that's coming in. And the energy is just pure, unconditional love, and it's coming from a divine source. It flows through me, and I'm happy about that because it feels like ecstasy when it's going through. But and anybody can do this. I mean, I'm not the only one. Anyone, there isn't anything that I can do that you can't. The book, You Are the Healer, that's when I was teaching for many, many years, I used that book as my manual for my class. And it does work, and it's very simple. And it doesn't have to be complex to be advanced.
Right. Yeah. I think it's an amazing thing. All of it from, I heard your story from childhood to now, and it's just, answered a lot of my questions that I had for you. So
that's great.
It's a blessing that you're, I don't know if I want to say your body or you are just more in tune with that gift than other people. And that you can do it remotely is amazing.
I know.
It just the whole thing is really, like you say, kind of a testament to everybody that things are possible with positive thinking and energy. So
yes. So that leads us into to ask Gene.
Yeah.
So he uses a phrase that he wants to demystify the mystical, and which I love. So Gene, tell us about when you worked through me and Eric, how that process works. Do you tap in? I mean, your book explains it incredibly well, but I'd like for our listeners to have a sense of what that process actually entails.
Well, there is no separation in spirit. We're all these immortal spirits living inside of these mortal bodies. The body's going to die sometime, but your spirit will live on. But as spirits, we're all connected, and you're more connected to the people that you love. So if you can develop a love for whoever you're working for, and it's not a romantic love or anything like that, it's an unconditional feeling of love, then you can literally send it with your intention, which is effortless, but it's also extremely powerful. And the reason maybe why I can do it now and maybe a beginner can't, it's only practice. I've been doing this my whole life, so it's easy, and I can teach anybody to ride a bicycle. I don't know if I can guarantee that they'll make the Olympics. Everything is energy, and because every part of a person, physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual, is energy. Every part can be accessed and changed through energy work. It's that simple, and anyone can do it.
Well, this is, and you know what, this energy manipulation has, been used from the ancient Egyptians to even present day shamans, and the list goes on. Prana in India, Chi in China. You just go through Africa, Greece, and so Native Americans talk about it. So I think in society, this has been something that they've not only talked about this energy, but the chakras. They probably use different words for it. But so this is part of, I think, our history that maybe sometimes as Americans or whatever, the West, we haven't acknowledged as much. But tell us about the chakras. You use a fabulous illustration in your book that the chakras are sort of like the fuse box of our body, and the meridians, which are the wiring that goes up and down, connects everything. So tell us a little bit about that.
Well, long before modern medicine, people used various forms of healing. One was in India using the chakras. That's about 3,000 years old. The other was Chinese medicine, which used meridians, which is about 5,000 years old. And energetically speaking, I feel both are valid. I think of if you were to think of your body as a house, okay? There are power lines coming into your house, right? And they go to your fuse box. Well, your power is coming in from around you, to your body through these things called chakras, okay? There are 7 major chakras that are in the body. I'm not counting the ones that are outside the body. And there are about 200 of them throughout the body, the minor ones. You have them in your hands and your feet and so on. And as the energy comes in, they come to the chakras. Now, a blocked chakra could be the same as a blown fuse. Okay, if you blow a fuse or a circuit breaker now, that stops the energy from going to the rest of the house. If someone is criticizing me mercilessly, making me feel terrible about myself, I know about that one. The issue for self-esteem has to do with the third chakra, which is which is in the stomach area. Now, if I've got a blockage there based on my inability to handle somebody else's criticism, that blockage is going to prevent the energy which normally and naturally flows in through the earth and goes in through that chakra and services those organs in the body. So if it's blocked, guess what? I'm going to get an upset stomach. I might get ulcers. I might get something worse. You see the correlation between the unblocked chakra, the shock blocker and the blocked chakra and the issue that's blocking it. So I have to get the person to resolve the issue first, and then I run energy through it and then unblocks it. But getting back to the issue of the body as a house. So once the energy is in through the chakras, it goes through the body. And it's like the wiring in your house, okay? But the wiring in your body is the meridians. There are 14 meridians, which are energy pathways that go through, or they go from the bottoms of the feet to the top of the head. Each one of them goes through one or more major organs in the body, and they surface at different places, just like the wiring in your house surfaces where you plug things in. Okay, and these are like these meridians have these acupuncture or acupressure points where you can access energy and handle the blockages. So it's similar, and so actually both of these these methods are valid, and they can both be seen working together. And in the past, one would say, "Oh no, this is better than that, and this is better than that," but they both work. They both work. And with energy work, I can run energy through the acupressure points or the acupuncture points without having to be using a needle, and anyway,
That's just
that get it.
Well,
Okay.
so when you worked on Eric, I remember because I was of course there listening, and you
Yeah.
started talking about pushing the muscle, and so it seems like what happened is you energetically pushed that infection out of Eric's muscle, because one of the things that happened too when Eric had the big blisters, and the doctors were stymied by that because they had, is then when they pop, this
Yeah.
pus came out, right? So it's like you
Well,
pushed that right out of his muscle through this energy, which is fascinating.
Well, when it's running energy and being a hands-on healer is nothing. It's so simple. It's laughable. What you're basically doing is you're taking this energy, which is pure love, and you're sending it through the area that's affected. But as you're pumping in this beautiful energy, you're also pulling out the trauma. Okay. And as you're pulling out the trauma, it leaves more space for the energy, and you're making a nice exchange. I can liken it to, let me just say that as spiritual beings, we all need to have things. You give a person a house, what do? They fill it with furniture. You give a spirit a body, what do? They fill it with emotional stuff. We like our soap operas. Why? I don't know, but we do. And even though our pain is painful, it's also familiar, so we tend to hold on to it. And we would rather have our own pain than nothing at all, because we fear having nothing. This is why therapy takes so long, because the therapist will get you to emote and get rid of all this stuff, right? And then a couple of days later, you're empty inside and you pull it back. So with energy healing, which I work with a lot of therapists and psychiatrists and doctors, I pour in the warm, loving energy as an exchange as I'm taking out the pain. And that way the person will hold on to the really good stuff and let go of the past. And the trauma, for the most part, except with, if it's a present time kind of thing, the trauma mostly is in the past. And the past no longer exists. So why hold on to it? All we have is the present moment, from one moment to the next. And whatever we do in this moment has everything to do with your future.
Wow. That's beautiful. And you have another really lovely analogy, which I think is segues. You talk about our bodies are kind of like a tuning fork, right? So, for instance, if we resonate in the note of A, which say anger, we'll say, but that will automatically, both magnetically and energetically, attract other angry people. If we resonate in fear, F, fear of F, then we're going to bring fear into our lives. And so, how can we try to resonate in, as you talk about unconditional love? What are some of the things we can do to move that tuning fork into a positive position?
Well, it's important to stay positive. And it's not always easy to do with everything that's surrounding us, with the media and everything else that's going on. It's terrible. But your thoughts do create your future. And I think that you need to focus on other things, like, for example, in my book, Learning to Fly. Hey, I get to.
There you go. Good.
How about that? In the back of it, I have 140 different ways to get you to take off and fly and to remain positive, basically. And uh, our own emotions are self-generating. We determine how we want to feel at any given time. I know a lot of people would disagree with me, but if you want to feel sad, think of your losses. Put on sad music. Start to cry. If you want to feel happy, surround yourself by beautiful music. Get some nice flowers. Go out and take a walk. Think of all the things that you do have. Feel gratitude.
Yes.
When I turned 50, which was decades ago, it was a turning point in my life because I decided I'm going to write down all the people in my life. And I had this big list. And I got into a meditative state. And I looked at each one, each name, and I listened to my own feelings. And for those people that made me feel really good, yeah, check mark. Others made me feel nervous, made me feel, just cut it out. I went down the list and I saw for all those people that I needed to cut out, some of them were energy vampires, others, were draining me. Some that were, I was handling all of their problems for them and they weren't taking responsibility. Anyway, as soon as I did that, I slowly distanced myself from those people that I no longer wanted to be connected with. And it actually made room for new people to come in. And those new people around me now, and these are people who I surround myself with, who I love, who love me. And love is really the most important thing. I mean, I hate even just working at a job where you hate. How can you go to a job that you hate? I have so many people who come here, and I have a way of getting them to find their true passion in life. It's I don't know what else to say.
Well, it's wonderful. And you say about love, which all throughout your work, you talk about unconditional love being the key to healing. And you talk about the higher form of love is the only thing that heals. And when I first just interaction with you, even through email, I felt that really beautiful, powerful love come through, come through the emails as well as, and then your books as well. So, is the goal then to try to clear out of our lives things that don't match up to that love? And of course, it's a high goal. We're not always going to meet it, but would you say that there's just try to let that love flow through you?
Well, it's tough to do when you're in pain. And my ultimate goal in a healing session is to get a person to forgive themselves and other people. Now, more people, 99% of the people who come here are beating themselves up for something that they did. Okay. And relentlessly, unrelentless. Anyway, they can't forgive themselves. Now, you can't get rid of the person's heartbreak unless, actually the pain in the heart is holding the lack of forgiveness there. And that pain in the heart is being held there by the anger that's below it. And that anger is being held there by the fear that's below it. And at the bottom of every problem, there's fear. So what I do in a session is I have to start with the fear and second chakra. And I work, other practitioners will have different chakras for different things, but I found that this works for me. I get rid of the fear. We address the fear, and then once we do that, and you went through the process yourself, really. So,
yes, amazing.
And then once that's gone, then it leaves the repressed anger vulnerable to attack. So we go in and get them to emote that, to get them to really release it and pull it out and give them something much nicer. Then, and only then, can you go in and get rid of all of the grief, all of the pain in a person's heart, all of the, the turmoil, all the bad things, the heaviness, the darkness. And, but you can do it. And I found a way to do that without a person going into grief all over again. It's sort of like letting the air out of a balloon slowly rather than popping it. And what I do is I get them, I have one hand under their back, behind their heart, and one above them. And I get them to get deep inside of their heart, feel the pain fully, but only for a second or two. That's the key before you go into grief. That's enough to unlock it and release it and allow me to pull it out. Mm-hmm. Now, as I'm pulling it out with one hand, I'm pumping in warm, loving energy coming in from behind them, which will replace that, and they will not pull it back. And we go through it many, 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 many times until get rid of it all. Only then can you get a person to forgive themselves. Mm-hmm. And
well, can I jump in here and say that experience for me was amazing. So we did, you did a healing on me first, and then we did Eric. But when you were done, when we were done, I've had this sort of heaviness on my chest for years, just feeling, I suppose, all the things that happen in life. You worry about things, you blame yourself for things. And I have not had it since. It was unbelievable. It's like a, 100-pound weight just lifted off. And I just went to sleep, and I never sleep during the day. But after our healing, mine and Eric's, I was just exhausted. I fell asleep for like 3, almost 4 hours, just dead sleep. And I woke up, and I tell you, Gene, I have not had that feeling of dread, angst, whatever, in my chest since then. So it definitely, I had a change in my life through it. And I could feel it. It was like a physical release.
Wonderful.
Yes.
Thank you for sharing.
Oh, well, I really would encourage people. We are going to have we could talk to you all day long, Gene, I know. But, I have had total change in my physical feelings of, just my body. And I know Eric has also experienced an amazing, situation too in his healing. And so I know we both want to totally thank you. And I'm going to have all your information at the end of this episode, so people can contact you. And you don't have to be there. I know you have people fly in from all over the world to have, Reiki or hands-on healing, but we both experienced it, distant healing, which is just phenomenal. And so I just want to end with one question. So you said in your book, you feel like the medical community is starting to open up to this to these modalities, which of course have been here for thousands of years. But you're seeing that because I know you consult with medical doctors and hospitals, and you have a lot of psychiatrists that come to you. So tell us about that.
I think the medical community is opening up to it. Unfortunately, they're not allowed. They've got their hands tied. When I go to my doctor for a yearly physical, her back is to me. She's typing as I'm talking. And, if I say, well, I have this pain in my chest or something, she won't even look. It's like, what? But, because they have to get all this paperwork done and everything. And, eventually she looks, but they're only allowed to spend 15 minutes with you at the most, and they're at the mercy of the insurance companies and the drug companies, and way back, I mean, our own modern medical facilities have only been here for 100 years, but for thousands of years before, people practiced alternative medicine. And now in large hospitals, in most large hospitals, they're having integrative medicine wings where they have people like me and others like acupuncturists and all sorts of others, herbalists and massage therapists. That's always great to come in and do their thing. And they find that, I find anyway, that one of the biggest things that I give to people are healing hugs. Now, it's such a simple thing, but there's a lack of human touch. Doctors aren't even allowed to touch or hug their patients. Their fear of being sued. It's a shame. And that touch that's why people come to me with hands-on healing. They can feel the energy coursing through their body and they feel the heat. I don't even feel the heat when I send it out, but I can feel it bouncing off the person coming back to me. It's really odd. But anyway, I get off on tangents. I'm sorry.
Oh no, that's wonderful.
But I think that it will either come to the point where those medical establishments are going to have to be reorganized somehow, or more and more people are going actually to people like me. Now, if you have an acute problem, you go to a doctor. Anytime that someone has a medical problem, I say go to a doctor or a therapist. Somebody's threatening suicide, call 911. But if there's something lingering, some emotional problem that they have, something that they work at. I had a lady who came a month or two ago, and she had a hole in her heart, literal, and she had to have an operation. And I worked on her. I didn't know if it would work or not. She came back a couple of weeks later. She said that she went for the echocardiogram or whatever they do. It's gone. They couldn't can't find it. Now, I don't tell that to too many people because then they have expectations, and expectations actually stop energy from moving. Your intention to move energy, expectations stop it. So, I never tell anybody, I never guarantee anything. Because you shouldn't. If you do, you boost their expectations. And then, it's just like everybody telling you how great this movie was, and then you go see and say, so have no expectations when you do it, but allow things to come in, allow possibilities to happen. And they do sometimes. Not always, but sometimes.
Well, they happened, both Eric and me. So we are so grateful. And you are so delightful.
It's my pleasure, really. It's so nice to meet you both.
Well, I just feel like we know you and we'll be friends. It's like you connect with some certain people and the energy is so good. You don't want to lose it. You don't want to lose that connection. So Eric and I want to thank you and just thanks for giving us an hour of your time, and we'll stay in touch. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Gene.
Bless you. Thanks so much.
Thank you for joining me today for my interview with Gene Krackehl. If you would like to know more about Gene's work, visit our website. And please subscribe to my podcast on YouTube by searching Have You Ever Wondered Podcast.
Have you ever wondered? Ever